I'm writing this because I need to share my story, maybe to find some clarity or just to vent. Call it therapy. My name is Mark, and I thought I had it all figured out. At least that's what I believed until my honeymoon turned into the worst experience of my life. I married Jenny, the woman I thought was my soulmate. We had been together for 3 years. It was a whirlwind romance, one of those stories where everything seemed perfect. She was beautiful, intelligent, and had a contagious laugh that could brighten anyone's day. Our friends often said we were a match made in heaven. However, as we sailed into the first few months of our marriage, a dark cloud loomed on the horizon. We decided to take a honeymoon cruise to the Caribbean. I was excited, but the night before we set sail, I was struck with an awful stomach bug. It was a nasty case of seasickness that knocked me off my feet. I thought it would pass, but when we boarded the ship, it only got worse. I ended up spending our first few days cooped up in our cabin, while Jenny explored the ship and mingled with other passengers. I thought she was just doing her thing, enjoying the festivities. I was confident she wouldn't stray. After all, we were newlyweds. But deep down, something felt off. I noticed a change in her when she came back to the cabin. She was distant, like she was hiding something. I brushed it aside. Who wouldn't be excited at the start of a honeymoon? I figured I was being paranoid and told myself to just focus on getting better. Yet as the days went by, my stomach settled, but my gut instinct was screaming. I remember one afternoon, still feeling weak but determined to at least enjoy part of the cruise, I decided to take a stroll around the deck. As I made my way, I saw Jenny laughing and chatting with our good friend Ryan, who was my best man at the wedding. They looked too comfortable together, standing close and sharing little secrets. I shook my head, trying to convince myself that I was imagining things. They were just having fun, right? But why did it bother me so much? That night I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. I decided to confront Jenny. When she returned from another late-night outing, I asked her about her time with Ryan. That's when she laughed it off, calling him a big teddy bear and saying I was just being ridiculous. But the way she deflected my questions made me uneasy. I had seen the way she looked at him. Her eyes sparkled with something that was not meant for me. A few days later, when I finally felt better, I decided to dig deeper. I searched through her purse, the one she insisted on bringing everywhere. I found her phone and saw messages that made my heart stop. Ryan's name was plastered all over the screen, and not in a platonic way. My hands shook as I read through the texts. They were flirtatious, filled with inside jokes and hints of something more. It was the first time I felt true betrayal, a hot wave of anger mixed with disbelief washing over me. I confronted Jenny right then and there. I demanded an explanation. At first she played dumb, pretending like I was making a big deal out of nothing. But when I showed her the texts, her demeanor changed. She tried to downplay it, saying they were just having fun, that it was harmless. But I knew better. My heart shattered as she tried to convince me that I was overreacting and that things like this happen on cruises. Everyone flirts a little, she said. I felt a mix of rage and pain. How could she say such things with a straight face? I wanted to scream at her, to tell her how wrong she was, but I was at a loss for words. Instead, I stood there, stunned, watching her as she acted like nothing was wrong, and I realized then that I had to make a choice. The weeks that followed were a turmoil of emotions. I felt betrayed, angry, and ultimately heartbroken. How could the person I loved betray me so easily? As my mind raced, I knew I had to decide how to handle this. I didn't want to be the guy who was walked all over. I started to plan my next steps, a way to navigate through this storm without her dead weight holding me back. I was ready for revenge, but I also had to consider what I truly wanted. I needed to think clearly, but the emotions were clouding my judgment. Taking a deep breath, I closed my eyes, preparing myself for the next steps in this painful journey. After the confrontation with Jenny, everything started to feel different. The honeymoon, which was supposed to be the happiest time of our lives, had turned into a living nightmare. I spent the next few days in a haze of anger and disbelief, replaying the events in my mind. I couldn't shake the image of her laughing with Ryan, the best man who I had trusted without question. The betrayal felt like a knife twisting in my gut, and I was left feeling utterly alone. As the cruise continued, I found myself going through the motions. I was physically on the ship, but mentally, I was off somewhere in the vast ocean of my thoughts. I started to avoid Jenny, spending my time wandering around the ship, sitting alone at the bar and watching the waves crash against the hull. I wanted to scream at the world, but instead, I just sat there, nursing my drinks and drowning in my sorrow. One evening, in a moment of desperation, I decided to seek out Ryan. I found him lounging by the pool, chatting with a group of people. The sight of him made my blood boil, but I approached him anyway, trying to keep my composure. I needed answers. Did he really think this was okay? Did he know what he was doing to our marriage? When I confronted him, he looked genuinely surprised at first. "Mark, what's up?" he said, his tone casual, but I could see a flicker of nervousness in his eyes. I didn't waste any time. "What's up? You're flirting with my wife while I'm stuck in our cabin, seasick. How could you do this to me?" Ryan's face paled, and I watched as he tried to come up with an excuse. "Dude, it was nothing. We were just having some fun. Jenny said you were too sick to join us." His nonchalance only infuriated me more. "Fun? You call that fun? You're my best friend. How could you betray me like this?" He stammered, attempting to defend himself, but I cut him off. "Save it. I don't want to hear your pathetic excuses. You've crossed a line you can't uncross." I could see the guilt washing over him, but it didn't matter. I turned on my heel and walked away, my heart racing with anger mingled with a sense of purpose. For the first time since the revelation, I felt empowered. I wouldn't let them walk over me. I wasn't just going to sit back and let this slide. That night, I decided to confront Jenny again. I needed to lay everything out on the table. I called her into our cabin, ready to have the talk that would either end our marriage or force her to come clean completely. "Jenny, we need to talk," I said firmly as she stepped inside. Her expression shifted, and I could tell she knew this wasn't going to be a casual chat. "I thought we had moved past this," she replied defensively. "I told you it was nothing." "Nothing? You call what you did nothing? You were flirting with Ryan like he was your boyfriend." I yelled, feeling the anger bubble up inside me again. "I want the truth. Did you sleep with him?" Her eyes widened in shock, but instead of answering, she began to spin a web of lies as she always did. "Mark, it was just harmless fun. We never even kissed, I swear." I couldn't believe her. It was infuriating how she could lie with such ease, and my heart sank as I realized that her words meant nothing. I could see the guilt all over her face, but she was too proud to admit it. "You need to own up to what you did, Jenny. You can't keep lying to me," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She crossed her arms, her expression hardening. "I'm not lying. You're just being paranoid because you were sick and couldn't be around me." The audacity of her words made me feel sick. Here we were on a beautiful honeymoon cruise, and she was making me feel like the villain for wanting some honesty. I could feel the anger boiling inside me, mixed with the deep sadness of the betrayal. "Look, I don't care if you think I'm paranoid. I know what I saw and what I read. You can't just dismiss my feelings," I retorted. "I deserve better than this." At that moment, a realization hit me like a wave. I didn't want to fight over this anymore. I wanted out. I didn't want to be married to someone who would treat me this way. "I think we need to take a break, Jenny. I need time to figure out what I want," I said, my heart racing at the thought of possibly ending it all. Her expression shifted from anger to something softer, perhaps fear. "Mark, please don't say that. I can change. We can fix this." But I was done listening to her empty promises. I had to protect myself. I was tired of feeling like a fool. I needed to navigate my way through this dark sea, and I couldn't do it with her dragging me down. The rest of the cruise felt excruciating. I spent my days in solitude, pondering my future without Jenny. As I watched the sunset over the horizon, I felt a sense of clarity wash over me. I wouldn't let her deceit define me. I'd find my way through this, even if it meant sailing alone. The rest of the cruise was a blur of emotions. I went through the motions, attending meals and pretending to enjoy the activities, all while my heart felt like a heavy anchor pulling me down. Jenny, on the other hand, tried to act like everything was normal, but I could see the cracks in her facade. She would occasionally glance at me, searching for a reaction, perhaps hoping I would come to my senses and recant my decision. But I was resolute. I knew what I needed to do. We spent our nights in silence, each of us retreating into our own thoughts. I would lie awake, staring at the ceiling of our cabin, listening to the sound of the waves crashing against the ship. Jenny would often be on her phone, scrolling through messages or taking calls in hushed tones. I wondered if she was texting Ryan or if she was trying to convince him that everything was still fine between us. It sickened me to think about. One evening, while I was sitting on the balcony trying to gather my thoughts, I heard her enter the cabin. She had just come back from another group activity, and her face was flushed with excitement. I couldn't help but feel a surge of jealousy. Who was she with now? What had she done? It was infuriating. "Hey, I thought you'd want to join us for karaoke," she said with a forced smile. "Everyone's having a blast." I looked at her, my heart hardening. "I'm not in the mood for karaoke, Jenny. I just need some time to think." Her smile faded, replaced by frustration. "This isn't healthy, Mark. We can't just ignore each other. We need to talk about what happened." I sighed deeply, knowing that we couldn't keep avoiding the elephant in the room. "You're right. We do need to talk," I replied, bracing myself for the conversation that could break us or force a change. "Let's go somewhere private," she suggested, and I nodded in agreement. We made our way to a secluded corner of the ship, away from prying eyes. My heart raced, knowing that this was the moment where I would lay everything out on the table. "All right, let's hear it," I said, folding my arms over my chest, trying to appear calm, but my stomach churned with anxiety. Jenny took a deep breath, her eyes searching mine. "I'm sorry about what happened. I shouldn't have let it go that far. I never meant to hurt you." "It's too late for that, Jenny," I interjected. "You don't just get to say sorry and expect everything to go back to normal. You crossed a line with Ryan." She looked down, guilt flickering across her face. "I know, but I was feeling lost. You were sick and I didn't know how to cope without you. I thought it was just harmless flirting." I shook my head in disbelief. "That's not an excuse. You didn't just flirt, you let it get physical, or at least you were willing to. I can't wrap my head around how you could do this to me." "I swear it didn't mean anything. Ryan means nothing to me," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "But you were willing to risk everything for a fling," I shot back, anger bubbling to the surface. "You were my wife and you chose to betray that trust. It feels like you threw away our entire marriage for a few moments of fun." As I spoke, I could see the tears welling in her eyes, but they didn't evoke the sympathy I thought they would. Instead, they fueled my resolve. "I need to know what you really want, Jenny. Are you willing to fight for this marriage, or are you just trying to save face because you got caught?" She paused, and in that moment I saw the gears turning in her mind. "I want to fix this with you," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I love you, Mark." Hearing her say those words felt like a slap in the face. "Love, is that what you call it?" I retorted, bitterness creeping into my tone. "You don't love someone and betray them like this. True love means honesty and respect." "I know," she cried, her voice breaking. "I messed up, but we can work through this if we both want it." I looked into her eyes, searching for sincerity, but all I found was panic. It was clear she was more worried about losing me than about what she had done. For the first time, I felt a flicker of pity for her, but it quickly faded. I needed to put myself first for once. "I don't think I can just pretend this didn't happen, Jenny. I don't know if I can trust you again," I admitted, the weight of my words heavy in the air. "Please, Mark, just give me a chance. I'll do whatever it takes to earn your trust back," she pleaded, desperation spilling from her voice. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the world pressing down on my shoulders. "I don't know if I can, Jenny. I need time to think about everything. The pain is still too fresh." The silence that followed was thick with uncertainty. I knew I had to make a decision soon. I couldn't let Jenny's actions dictate my happiness anymore. Whether it meant facing the unknown or finding a way to break free from the shackles of betrayal, I was determined to sail through life without her dead weight. As we stood there, the sound of the ocean dancing beneath us, I realized that I had to reclaim my narrative. I owed it to myself to prioritize my happiness and well-being. With or without Jenny, I had to chart my own course. After that conversation with Jenny, my resolve only strengthened. I spent the next couple of days on the cruise trying to gather my thoughts and emotions, but the weight of everything was suffocating. I was torn between the love I once felt for Jenny and the gut-wrenching betrayal that lingered in my heart. The ship's vibrant atmosphere, filled with laughter and celebrations, felt like a cruel joke, a reminder of the innocence I had lost. I decided to spend my days in solitude, wandering the ship and avoiding any social activities. I needed time to think. On one of those solitary afternoons, I found myself sitting on the deck, watching the waves roll by. I stared at the endless horizon, feeling both small and free. I envisioned a life without Jenny, a life where I could reclaim my happiness, where I wouldn't have to question someone's loyalty constantly. It was during one of these reflective moments that I ran into Ryan again. I was surprised to see him standing at the bar, drink in hand, looking relaxed. My heart raced at the sight of him, the man who had shattered my trust. I felt an overwhelming urge to confront him again, to make him understand the depth of his betrayal. "Hey, Mark, you look like you're deep in thought," he said casually, attempting to act like everything was fine. I took a deep breath to calm my nerves. "Yeah, well, I've had a lot on my mind, like how you decided to sleep with my wife while I was stuck in our cabin." His smile faltered, and I could see the guilt creeping back into his expression. "Look, I already told you that it wasn't like that. We just had some fun." "Fun? Is that what you call it?" I replied, anger bubbling up again. "You broke the one rule we had as friends. You don't mess with someone else's marriage, especially when you're supposed to be my best man." Ryan looked defensive, his eyes darting around as if searching for an escape. "I didn't mean for it to happen. It just happened. You know how it is on a cruise. Everyone gets caught up in the moment." I stepped closer, my voice low but firm. "That's not an excuse. You could have walked away, but you chose to betray me. You chose to betray our friendship." He opened his mouth to respond, but I didn't give him a chance. "You need to understand something, Ryan. I don't want to hear your excuses. You don't get to play the victim here. You're not innocent in this. You took advantage of a situation, and now you need to live with that." He met my gaze, and for the first time I saw something genuine in his eyes, regret mixed with fear. "Mark, I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you. I hope you're truly sorry, because I'm done with you. You're not my friend anymore," I said, my voice steady. "I can't trust you. This whole thing has shown me that you're not worth my time or energy." With that, I turned away from him, feeling a sense of liberation wash over me. It was a small victory, but it felt monumental to finally stand up for myself. I wouldn't let Ryan's betrayal haunt me any longer. I needed to focus on my own healing and reclaim my life. The following day, as the cruise drew to a close, I made my way back to our cabin. Jenny was sitting on the bed, hesitant and small, waiting for me. I could see the anxiety etched across her face. She had been eagerly anticipating my decision, and I didn't want to drag this out any longer. "Mark, can we please talk?" she asked, her voice trembling. I nodded, taking a deep breath. "I think it's time we address what's next for us. Are you going to give me a chance? I promise I'll do better. I'll work on myself," she pleaded, her eyes searching my face for any sign of hope. "Jenny, I've thought a lot about us, and I've come to a conclusion." I could feel my heart racing as I prepared to say the words that would change everything. "I don't think we can salvage this. Trust is too fragile, and you've shattered mine." Her face fell, and for a moment I thought she might cry. "Please don't say that. I can change. I'll do anything. I can't live in a relationship where I'm constantly doubting you. I deserve better than that," I continued, my voice steady. "I need to focus on myself, on healing, and I can't do that with you in my life right now." Her eyes filled with tears, and I felt a pang of sorrow for the person I once knew. "Mark, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for it to get this far." "But it did, Jenny, and now it's time for us to part ways. It's painful, but I think it's for the best." As I said those words, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. I was finally taking control of my life, letting go of the toxic relationship that had dragged me down. I watched as she processed what I had said, and while it broke my heart to see her hurting, I knew it was necessary. As the ship docked and we prepared to disembark, I felt a strange mix of sadness and liberation. I was stepping off that ship alone, but in a way it felt like I was finally free. Free from the lies, the betrayal, and the weight of a relationship that had become suffocating. I looked out at the horizon, the sun setting beautifully over the water. I realized that while my heart was heavy, my future was wide open. I could chart my own course now, one that didn't involve Jenny or Ryan. It was time for me to heal, to rediscover who I was without the dead weight holding me back. As I stepped onto solid ground, I felt a newfound determination. I would sail through life, unburdened and ready to embrace whatever came next. Disembarking from the cruise was surreal. The familiar city sounds greeted me as I stepped onto solid ground. The air felt fresh, the sun shone brightly, but inside I was a storm of emotions. I had just severed ties with the life I thought I would have, and while it felt heavy, there was also a flicker of hope igniting within me. I stayed in a hotel for a few days to collect my thoughts and regroup. The first night alone, I couldn't help but replay everything that had happened over and over in my mind. I thought about the moments Jenny and I had shared, the dreams we had built, and how quickly it all unraveled. It was like watching a movie where I was both the lead and the audience, unable to change the plot. But instead of succumbing to despair, I decided to focus on myself. I started by diving into things that brought me joy, reading, going for long runs, immersing myself in my work, and spending time with friends who truly cared for me. I reached out to some close buddies, and soon enough I was surrounded by laughter and understanding. One evening I met up with my college roommate Alex at our favorite bar. As we sat at the bar, sipping beers, I shared my story. I talked about the betrayal, the heartbreak, and my decision to end things with Jenny. "Honestly, man, I've always thought you deserved better," Alex said, looking me straight in the eye. "You were always the one putting in the effort while she took you for granted." Hearing him say that made me realize how blind I had been to the relationship's dynamics. I had poured so much love into Jenny, and yet she couldn't reciprocate it in the most crucial way, by being faithful. "You're right," I admitted, feeling the weight of realization settle in. "I thought love was enough, but it's also about respect and trust. Without those, it's just not worth it." As the weeks went by, I began to feel more like myself again. I started going to therapy, seeking guidance on how to navigate my new life without Jenny. My therapist helped me understand that pain is a part of healing, and it's okay to grieve. The loss of a relationship, no matter how toxic it may have been. One session, I shared my fears about moving on. What if I never find someone who loves me the way I imagined I would be loved? I asked, vulnerability spilling from my voice. "Mark, love will come again," my therapist replied gently. "But first, you must learn to love and trust yourself. Take this time to understand what you want and need in a partner, and don't settle for anything less." Her words resonated deeply with me. I realized that I couldn't rush into another relationship until I had healed and reflected on my own needs. The focus had to be on self-love. I needed to reclaim my identity. As months passed, I took small steps toward rediscovery. I joined new clubs, tried out hobbies I had never pursued, and even started traveling alone. I found a sense of freedom in exploring the world on my own terms, without the constraints of a relationship. One day, while hiking in a national park, I had a revelation. I stood atop a mountain peak, gazing out at the breathtaking view, and for the first time since the betrayal, I felt truly at peace. I realized I was stronger than I had ever given myself credit for. I had faced betrayal, heartbreak, and disappointment, yet I was still standing. I was ready to embrace life again. Eventually, I reconnected with old friends and met new people, each interaction adding to my growing confidence. It wasn't long before I found myself on a date with someone new, Sarah, a cheerful woman I met at a book club. We bonded over our love for literature and shared our stories of resilience. Our conversations flowed effortlessly, filled with laughter and genuine connection. As I sat across from her, I felt a warmth spreading through me, a feeling I hadn't experienced in a long time. I realized that I could open my heart again, but this time I would be more cautious. I needed to ensure that I was with someone who valued trust and loyalty as much as I did. The date turned into several, and as my feelings for Sarah grew, I felt a mixture of excitement and fear. I was terrified of getting hurt again, but I also knew that I had to take a leap of faith. I wanted to believe that there were still good people out there, and perhaps I could find love again. At one point, I found the courage to tell Sarah about my past. I shared the story of Jenny and Ryan, the heartbreak, and the journey to healing. To my surprise, she listened intently, her empathy shining through. "You deserve someone who respects you, Mark. "It's brave of you to talk about your past, and it shows how much you've grown," she said softly. Her understanding was refreshing, and I felt a sense of relief knowing that I could be open with her without judgment. As we continued to date, I took my time, cherishing the moments we shared. There was no rush. I wanted to build a solid foundation based on trust and honesty. Reflecting on everything I had been through, I realized that the pain of my past had shaped me into who I was today, a stronger, more resilient person who understood the value of true love. I had learned that while betrayal is painful, it can also lead to growth and self-discovery. I was ready to embrace whatever came next, knowing that I had the power to write my own story, one filled with hope, love, and the knowledge that I would never settle for less than I deserved. I was sailing toward a bright horizon, ready for the adventures that awaited me. As Sarah and I continued to explore our relationship, I couldn't help but marvel at how far I had come since that fateful cruise. The journey hadn't been easy, but every step forward felt like reclaiming a part of myself that had been lost in the aftermath of Jenny's betrayal. One evening, we decided to take a weekend trip together. We headed to a quaint little beach town where the sound of waves crashing against the shore provided the perfect backdrop for a much-needed escape. As we walked along the beach hand in hand, I felt a warmth radiating from within me. It was a different kind of happiness, one rooted in trust and genuine connection. "Sarah, I'm really glad we did this," I said, looking out at the sun setting over the ocean. The vibrant colors painted the sky, reflecting the newfound light in my life. "Me too, Mark. I love spending time with you," she replied, her smile infectious. As we settled onto the sand, I turned to her, feeling a wave of vulnerability wash over me. "I want to be honest with you about my past. I've been hurt before, and it's been a journey to get here." She nodded, encouraging me to continue. "I appreciate you sharing that with me. I know you've been through a lot. I want you to feel safe with me." Hearing her words reassured me. It felt good to be able to open up without fear of judgment or dismissal. "I thought I'd never find someone who understands what I've been through, but you make it easy to be myself," I admitted. Sarah reached out and squeezed my hand, her touch grounding me in that moment. "You deserve to be happy, Mark. You've done a lot of work to heal and grow. I'm here for you every step of the way." As we sat there, watching the sun dip below the horizon, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. I had survived the storm of betrayal, and in doing so, I had learned valuable lessons about love, trust, and resilience. I was no longer the man who had been blindsided by infidelity. I was stronger, more self-aware, and ready to embrace love again. Over the following weeks, our relationship deepened. We shared our dreams, fears, and aspirations, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a true partnership forming. It was refreshing to be with someone who communicated openly and respected boundaries. Sarah was everything I had hoped for and more. One night, as we sat on my couch watching a movie, I turned to her and said, "I want to take the next step in our relationship. I'm ready to fully commit to you." Her eyes lit up and a smile spread across her face. "I'd love that, Mark. I feel the same way." In that moment, I realized that I had finally found a healthy love, one built on mutual respect and trust. I felt a weight lifted off my shoulders as I embraced the possibilities of a bright future with someone who truly valued me. Reflecting on my journey, I recognized that while my past was painful, it had led me to this moment. I had learned that love shouldn't come with strings attached. It should be a safe haven where both partners uplift and support each other. I vowed to carry that lesson with me as I moved forward. Life continued, filled with laughter and growth. I made it a point to keep my heart open while also setting healthy boundaries. I didn't rush things with Sarah. Instead, I enjoyed every moment we shared, letting our relationship unfold naturally. As time went on, I couldn't help but think about Jenny and Ryan. There was a time when I had allowed their actions to define me, but now I saw them as part of my past, a chapter that had closed, giving way to new beginnings. I often reminded myself that it's okay to feel pain, but it's also crucial to rise from it. I had learned to love myself first, and in doing so, I was able to love someone else genuinely. In the end, it wasn't just about moving on from betrayal. It was about moving forward with strength and grace. I had navigated through turbulent waters and emerged stronger on the other side, ready to embrace life's adventures. As I sat on the beach that day with Sarah, watching the sun set over the ocean, I felt a profound sense of peace. I was no longer just a victim of betrayal. I was a survivor, charting my own course toward happiness. With every wave that lapped against the shore, I knew I was free, free to love, free to heal, and free to sail through life on my own terms.